Hey everyone, greetings. It's Naomi Wolf, CEO of DailyClout, and I'm so honored and delighted today to be welcoming someone with a really important story. I mean, a world-changing story, and that's Ellen Jasmer. Welcome, Ms. Jasmer.
Hi.
So great to have you. So you have so many credentials. You're an RN, an LM, which I believe is a licensed midwife, correct?
Correct.
A CPM, what is that? Certified.
CPM is a certified professional midwife.
There we go. And a CNM, certified nurse midwife.
Correct.
So highly credentialed. Ms. Jasmer has been practicing midwifery. She's at the Sierra Natural Birth Center in Sonora, California, one of my favorite parts of the world. I grew up a little south of you in San Francisco, bringing babies into the world for over 45 years now. After the loss of her first pregnancy and the realization that she knew absolutely nothing about her own body or pregnancy, Ms. Jasmer wanted to learn everything she could in preparation for her next pregnancy. Very wise. When reading the early writings of Ina May Gaskin, who is a heroine of mine as well, she knew she was to become a midwife, which inspired her educational quest in the spring of 1974. She caught her first baby in June of 1976. In her early years, Ms. Jasmer attended births as a traveling home birth midwife throughout the Sierra foothills and Central Valley. Her dream to have her own birth center close to home where families can come and have their babies, I'm going to cry now, in a peaceful and comfortable environment came to fruition June 19th, 2014. Ms. Jasmer believes that every baby should be born into loving hands and desires for that love to be extended to the parents throughout the childbearing year. Now, I should have brought tissues. This is so moving.
It just made me cry.
This is accomplished through a holistic and educational approach to care that empowers women and their partners to trust and feel comfortable with their bodies. So I'm so honored to have you. And I'm going to begin with the reason that we're talking. But first, I'm going to say part of why I'm so truly moved and happy and ecstatic to be talking to you, even if what we're talking about is very serious, is that we've been sounding the alarm about damage to babies since about nearly a year. Damage to women's menstrual cycles since 2021, and damage to babies that we've seen in the Pfizer documents for about a year. And literally almost every person I've spoken to about the damage to babies that they're seeing in their practices has been male. And I've been wondering where are the women healthcare practitioners who care about women and babies? That used to be such a robust set of voices. So you are literally the first that I've been able to hear from about what you're seeing. And the reason we're speaking right now is that you or your colleagues reached out to me to say that you were seeing some unusual, disturbing things in the practice that you have in the beautiful Sonora foothills of the Sierra Nevada, where that you're concerned about what you're seeing. So have I gotten that right so far?
Yes.
So please just jump in and tell me what you're seeing that led you to contact me.
So what we're seeing, and it first started with when our first woman that had COVID during her pregnancy, her placenta, it was just shocking when it came out because it was like silver and glistening and with these bright red vessels, which the tree of life, the placentas are beautiful with the tree of life, the vein figure, the figuration of the veins. And so when I looked closer, the silverness of it was these little tiny bumps that I dubbed COVID bumps. That's what I nicknamed them. And they're like little calcifications. It was throughout the whole fetal side of the placenta, little tiny bumps that were the size, and that placenta were the size of a pinhead. And it was just totally covered. And so it gave it a white appearance more than what we usually see, with kind of a bluish tint. And also you could feel them. They were actual little bumps.
Oh my gosh.
Similar to infarcts, which is they're bigger areas that were, that are calcified over, that the placenta is not working at that point.
Oh my gosh. Can I just jump in, Ms. Jasmer? You say that placenta was silver. What is the normal color of a placenta? You said bluish?
It's normal, kind of bluish and glistening with, like red undertones, but it was just, it was just more strikingly silvery.
Like metallic silver? That sounds so weird. Like not gray, like silver, like metal.
It was not as bright as silver as metal, but kind of gray and more and cloudy. And
oh my gosh.
Cloud was complete. I mean, it was all over the placenta. Instead of having it reflect, I have pictures that I can send to you.
You will share those.
Pairing, other placentas and such like that.
And then just so I understand, these calcified, which means hard, right? Hard to the touch.
Right.
Bumps. You said they're on the fetal side, meaning what we would call the inside of the placenta. Is that correct?
Right. That's next to the baby.
Next to the baby. Oh my gosh.
We would normally see calcifications on the maternal side, and the maternal side is very rich maroon red. And then the calcifications, you could feel them like grainy and white. And so, but they usually would not show on the fetal side.
Right.
And so I think what that's happening is with the bumps is that it is calcifications of the microcirculation, the tiny, the microcirculation is just like the very thin capillaries that just like one blood cell can fit through. And so they're calcified over and they would bunch up, I guess. And so we see it in different degrees. And now it's like,
sorry, Ms. Jasmer, I just have so many follow-up questions. This is so concerning. What would that do to the baby? Like, why does the baby need the microvessels to not be calcified? A. B, do you ever see calcifications under normal circumstances? And I guess C, how were the mother and the baby? Did anything unusual happen to them in that case?
Right. So normally we do see calcifications when the placenta gets old, like someone's overdue.
Right.
And it's usually when they're overdue, not so much if they're early. You don't really see that many calcifications. And that can be in the range of normal that we see, and that what I've seen over 40 years. And I have always really examined the placentas because it tells us, and even more so now because it tells us a story. And so the way the placenta works is that the placenta is attached to the maternal uterus. Mm-hmm. So then the amniotic sac comes over the fetal side of the placenta, and it's even partly on the cord, and it comes around and it goes around the whole uterus. Mm-hmm. So the placenta has these placental lakes in it where the maternal circulation and capillaries go into those pools of blood that are in the placenta. And so through diffusion that the nutrients and the oxygen go through the microcirculation of the mother. And then also it goes into the microcirculation of the placenta that goes to the cord and to the baby. And that's how the baby gets fed and nourished throughout pregnancy. And so with the calcifications that we're seeing in the microcirculation, it's like the bodies are getting the message, the woman's bodies are getting the message that, the placenta is not working as well in supporting the baby. And so I'm going to use an example of a recent one that we had. She, the baby was 3 pounds and 2 ounces.
Oh my gosh.
Placenta came out, and small placentas make small babies, but the placenta was small. It was like this big. And then there's this whole section about this big. That was the only working part of the placenta. And I did a little video of this placenta and that I will share with you. And then the whole
show me what size a normal placenta is with your hands.
Normal placentas are about like this.
Wow. So it was like 1 to 2 inches in circumference more constricted than a normal placenta.
Yeah. It was like from here to like here.
Whoa. Yeah. So going back to the calcifications and the COVID bumps that you described, as I'm understanding you explaining the role of the microcapillaries, when they're calcified, the baby's starving, right? Or not getting the nutrients.
Well, it can get, yeah. And it's not like there must be, there's some, it's amazing how much the placentas protect the babies and most of the babies. Now, this one that I'm talking about was very dramatic because he had gotten sick New Year's Eve this year, December 2022. Now, she was only sick for a few days. She tested negative for COVID, but I believe that she had COVID some other time, and I don't remember her vaccination status. I don't think she was, I don't remember her vaccination status at this point. Mm-hmm. But then 2 weeks, that she was around 30 weeks. And then two weeks later, 32 weeks gestation, the babies are usually half their birth weight. Mm-hmm. When they're born, their length is usually half of the weeks that they were born. And so she was born at 38 weeks, and the baby was born at 38 weeks and measured 16 inches. And so that would tell me that that baby was stunted at 32 weeks, just after she had that virus.
Oh my goodness.
Seeing that, there's different people, different families that will have COVID, and some will test negative and some will test positive. There's no way to know for sure that it was COVID.
Right.
But what we saw in the placenta was dramatic. And that little section of her placenta, it was thin. Usually placentas are thick, and when you touch them and they spring back like cooked bread. Mm-hmm. And there's, they're meaty. And this one, it was thin. It was like maybe a quarter of an inch thick on this side, and it was totally calcified over and totally yellow. You'll be able to see it in the pictures, in the video. And we also got a pathology report on the placenta. And another thing that was happening with that placenta was that the cord was very thin. And the pathologist, in one of the arteries, there's 2 arteries and 1 vein in the cords. And in one of the arteries, it was totally occluded with calcifications. And another thing that we see in some of the placentas is that instead of having, a clear like vein pattern where the vessels are very red and they have clear borders. It's like,
right.
We see this cloudiness coming up around the vessels, and some of them, like in the microcirculation, which you'll see in the videos, that they're just totally white. They're not working. But
so it's dead, basically a dead area. It's not.
Yeah, it's dead area. It's not functioning.
Good God.
So anyways, it's a miracle that this baby was, and even the pathologist is saying, I don't see how this baby was alive. And it was so interesting also that her body, she went into labor naturally, and her contractions were far apart. And then she was having early labor for a good day. But they were like 8 minutes apart. And usually, active labor is like, 3 to 5 minutes apart or 3 to 4 minutes apart. But I wanted to check her out. And so when I was listening to the baby, and I put her on a little fetal monitor, and every time she would have a contraction, the baby's heart rate would plummet down to 50s and 60s, but would come right back up to normal baseline, and with good variability in between the contractions. And so that's when we determined it's just like, even though she wasn't in active labor, and she was like maybe, let's see, I can't remember, maybe 5-6 centimeters. We decided to go to the hospital because it was, safer for the baby to be born. And we don't know what's going to happen when she's in super active labor. So
Can I just jump in for people who may not be following? So basically, her contractions were not coming close together enough.
Right.
She wouldn't need a C-section. That's why you went to the hospital, or that she may have needed more observation than she could get at home. Is that correct?
Right, at the birth center. And
Right.
it's also what they can do continuous monitoring. So they might be able to, do a C-section quickly if need be.
Right. And pardon me, but for people who don't know, the reason it's dangerous when a baby's heart rate drops is it can cause brain damage, right? To the
Yeah.
baby.
And also it's cutting off their oxygen.
Right. Right.
And potentially, the baby could die inside.
Understood. Go ahead, please.
If the circulation wasn't feeding the baby. And so it was amazing for me, it was to see how her body, there was some sort of feedback inside the woman's body that her body knew that the baby couldn't handle of labor. And so these contractions were 8 minutes apart.
Wow, I get it.
Hospital, and she dilated in a centimeter in an hour.
Is the baby okay now? Is the woman okay now?
Baby's great.
Baby
Weighed 3 pounds and 2 ounces.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the similar feeling. It's like, well, we don't know what's going to happen when you get into superactive labor, with the baby's, getting oxygen cut off with the contractions. And so they were preparing for a cesarean. They shaved her, and then I was holding the monitor on her, and I could feel her body pushing. And I, said her body's pushing. And then the mother goes, "Oh, is that what that was?" Mm-hmm. And then the next contract, and so the doctor's, trying to, well, let's check you out. And then she had another contraction, and she had.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna ask you to bullet point a little and get to the conclusion because there's so much more we have to cover. I'm gonna cut what I just said. Yeah. Okay.
So, anyways, she dilated really quickly with those 8 minute apart contractions. And they decided, okay, the baby's coming. So she had a vaginal birth. They, the anesthesiologist and everything was there, and she had a vaginal birth, and the baby was fine, but very tiny. And so the baby did end up going to the NICU because it didn't have any fat.
Right.
And and the placenta was sticky to come out. It was hard to get out, but the doctor got the placenta out, and that's what I have the video of.
Okay, and that's the completely compromised, weird COVID bumps placenta that you were describing.
Yeah, COVID bumps and super calcified, and more bigger, even beyond the COVID bumps. But it was just very stunted.
So we're going to get into more of the things that you're seeing more recently. But first, what I want to note is there's been a report showing that maternal deaths in childbirth are up by, I believe, 40%. And what I've been saying in interviews is we're going back now to a situation, a kind of pre-21st century, pre-20th century situation for childbirth, in which childbirth is dangerous for women. And I'm not a midwife, so I'm just, I've written a book about obstetrics and gynecology and midwifery. But based on that, I'm thinking, what could be causing or contributing to these maternal deaths? Well, you've just given one example. If the placenta is sticky, or there's hemorrhages internally, or, the placenta is compromised, that can be very dangerous for the mother, right? I mean, that's a 19th century situation of septicemia, infections. Is that not correct?
Yes, that's correct. And also, when you think about it, you have the placenta where the microcirculation is you can see it. It gives itself to us so we can examine it. But if it's happening on the placenta side, it's happening on the maternal side. And so what I find is, and also recently, is that when examining the placenta, there's areas where when you're examining it and you touch it, it doesn't bleed. There's no vessels that are exposed. It bleeds, where if you push it, that blood comes out.
Right.
We've seen that. And it's just like if the microcirculation is getting, diminished. And so it makes the lumen of the vessels that are feeding it, when it breaks off or however it's released, they're bigger lumens.
I don't know what a lumen is. What's
a lumen? Is the opening of the vessel.
Gotcha.
So it's like you have in microcirculation, it's just like one blood cell goes through, but then it gets bigger to where there's more blood flow through. It's a fatter, it has a bigger lumen in it.
So basically, I think what you're saying is the fact that these calcifications are on the maternal side as well as on the baby side could be causing problems to the mom as well, right? Danger to the mom. Is that what you're saying? It is the danger like blood clotting, pooling of blood, infection? What is the danger that presents in childbirth if there are calcifications or blocked microvessels on the maternal side?
So what happens with the maternal side, what I think is what's happening, because we can't really go in there and examine, but because when the placenta is on the uterus, being fed by vessels that are coming through the uterus, and the uterus has 3 layers, and the third layer is like figure 8 shape around the vessels, which they call them living ligatures. And so when the uterus contracts down and gets smaller, when the baby's out and when the placenta comes out, those muscle layers pinch off the vessels. But if vessels have bigger lumens, it's harder for them to break off.
Oh my gosh.
Pinch off. And also as the placenta is releasing, we see, gushes.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
They're bigger lumens, and so there's more bleeding. And so we have seen more bleeding.
Oh my gosh. Now I just do want to jump in. This is so horrifying to me because this sounds exactly like what killed women in the 19th century. That they would bleed to death, they would hemorrhage to death. The doctor couldn't get the whole placenta out. I mean, you're describing a very dangerous situation. You're describing a situation in which nature did this miraculous thing in a healthy woman of like allowing the placenta to detach when the baby was done being born, right? To detach safely. And now the placenta can't detach safely. That's what you're saying by sticky, right? That you have to like remove it in pieces, which is very dangerous to the mom.
Sometimes, partially separated. So if it's partially separated, it leaves everything else open to.
Oh God.
Right.
It's horrible. Plus very painful for the woman, isn't it?
Yeah, if she has to have a manual removal of the placenta, yes.
Oh God, how awful! And the alternative is surgery, where there's a surgical removal of the placenta, right? Or how else?
So there's manual removal, and see in the hospital they do that. They can give the woman anesthesia. In the birth center, we don't do that.
Right.
And so, and then also the one with the tiny placenta. He went into the OR, so she could be put under, and so they could tease it out. And he was very gentle, and so it all came out in one piece.
Right, but it's a so much more dangerous, devastating thing to have to deal with than a placenta that detaches as it should, and it can be pulled out, without any injury.
In over 40 years, I might have had maybe just. I don't know how many, maybe a handful of hemorrhages that were over 1,000 cc's. Last year we've had, and I have a small, healthy, low risk group of women I work with. And we've seen so many hemorrhages that were 1,200 cc's.
Can you show me what that looks like? 1,200 cc's? Is it so like
1,200 cc's? So 1,000 cc's is a liter, and
my God,
like a quart.
Holy cow! Yeah. Are you saying you've seen in your practice? And I really want to stress this because this is true. You're not treating low-income women, for the most part. You're not. I mean, I'm not saying you're not, but your population, people who live in Sonora and are, educated and healthy enough to choose a midwifery center, you're going to have a disproportionately healthy, well-educated, plenty of medical care if they need it, vitamins, healthy food kind of population. So even in this population, you're seeing the kinds of things that, right these days we hear about in developing countries. And you're saying you're seeing multiple cases of these otherwise healthy women bleeding between a quart and a liter when they give birth. Is that what you're saying? And
a liter. A quart and a liter is about the same.
I'm sorry, I'll say that again.
Over a liter.
Building a liter of blood or over a liter of blood. That is catastrophic. I mean, and what's normal? Like barely.
So normally, it's considered a hemorrhage over 500 cc's, which is about 2 cups. And normally we would see, 350, 5, very, once in a while we get a 500, and like if we get a 500 now or a 600, it's just like, that's kind of more of a relief. And so one of the things that we're starting to do is do more active management where we can, if they want it, because a lot of people come to the birth center because they don't want to have an IV, they don't want to have intervention. And so, but when we're talking to them, or if they have any risk factors in relationship to potentially hemorrhaging, or if they had hemorrhaged before, then we will give them a saline lock in their arm. And then right after the baby's born and the cord has stopped pulsing, we can give them IV Pitocin, which I found in my small group, sample size of women that I help, is that it works better to do it through an IV, and it's like the uterus contracts more evenly to let
But what you are, yes, absolutely. And thank God you're finding ways to preventively and actively care for these unusual birth situations. But I'm also recognizing that it sounds like the things women's bodies used to be able to do naturally, which is why they go to a birth center, because our bodies are set up to give birth naturally. In many cases, they can no longer do. Right? Like the Pitocin and the IV, these are interventions that are usually in hospitals because healthy women are able to, contract by themselves without Pitocin or not hemorrhage, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're describing women who have been impaired by something in their ability to give birth.
Yeah, it seems, and it's sad, but at the birth center, we can give Pitocin after the baby's born for hemorrhage. We don't give Pitocin for induction or anything like that. We're in the hospital, most of the women will have an IV and they will have Pitocin even in labor. And so, their active management is a active part of their practice.
Right. So it's very different still.
We see in relationship to the microcirculation and the growth, because a woman's vagina during pregnancy will get more engorged and that will get puffy. And so there's, circulation happening there. So they can, stretch around their new little world of their baby coming through. And so we've had a couple of hematomas, like during the pushing stage, the woman will, say, ow, and there's nothing, and it was different, like in between contractions. And so what's happening is that, I don't know if the baby is punching the baby at some point, but somehow there's a vessel that is broken
punching the uterine wall or the placenta?
Inside or in their vagina, when they're coming, it's like through this in the second stage, the head not coming out, but it's or the baby's, still partly in there, because sometimes they're born like this. And so there might be an elbow or something, but it's like they're not pushing at that point, but then they'll say, ow. And then one time there was like a little blood that came out so we've seen deep vaginal tears that we normally wouldn't see, that bleed because it's more vascular, and also can cause a hematoma in between the tissues. And so it grows, it's like bleeding inside, but it's like a huge blood blister. So there's a lot of pressure. And so they feel a lot of pain in their rectum, and sometimes even bruising that you can see on their, on their gluteal cheek,
Oh my gosh.
That's
unusual. That's a new thing.
It's very unusual. I mean, it can happen.
Right.
But I haven't seen it.
More of it.
We might see a little hematoma, but not these big ones.
How big are the hematomas you're seeing now?
Well, this one was 13 centimeters.
Good God. And show us with your hands how big that is.
So it was like, it wasn't round. It was like multifaceted. So it was like this big.
Oh my gosh. Inside the woman's vagina?
Inside the woman's vagina and pressing into their rectum.
Oh, how agonizing.
And also going up above, behind their pubic bone.
So also preventing the normal passage of the baby through the vaginal canal.
No, the baby's already coming in. The baby's coming out.
See.
So once the baby's out, that's when it starts building and growing in there. And,
oh my God. So excuse me, jumping in. Sorry to keep interrupting you. I just want people to really understand this is so serious. A hematoma is a scar tissue caused by bleeding under the skin?
No, it's not scar tissue. So what is like the vessels are, I mean, this is what I think. Somehow the vessels are weakened because, you know, those vessels are growing the same time the baby's growing. And so there's some weakness in the vessels. And so if there's like the baby moving in a certain way or maybe when just during pushing, you know, when the head is coming through, it's breaking those vessels. It's causing a tearing inside.
Oh my gosh.
So if the tear is not exposed, you know, open to produce bleeding, then it goes, you know, then it
goes under.
Yeah, and makes all the pressure. And if in the vagina, if it tears, it really bleeds. And so it's, you know, deeper in the vagina. It's just not, this tissue is not as strong.
Right, I understand. Well, this corresponds with what certain dissident doctors have been warning, that I hope I'm saying this right, the endothelial lining of blood vessels is being impaired or compromised by the materials in the vaccine, which we'll get to. But so you're describing big hematomas, bleeding that's impacted, you know, damaged blood vessels essentially in the vaginal canal and pressing against the rectum. So surely, even assuming the baby is doing well, it makes childbirth much more painful and again dangerous. But doesn't it also risk affecting women's sexual response subsequently?
It could. It's hard to. I mean, it's like the women that have had the bad hematomas, just like, you know, is this going to happen again? I've had, you know, 2 beautiful births, but, you know, is this going to happen again? And it's not going to. It doesn't really matter where they're going to have the baby. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
You know, when we need to go in, we need to go in.
My gosh.
We're just more on it with, you know, trying to control any hemorrhages. And so we have not lost any moms.
Thank God.
Lost any babies.
Thank God.
You know, during this time. And
you're saying women are changing. You're seeing women, you know, women's kind of placenta, vaginal canals, you know, circulation, microcirculation changing. That's what you're saying. It's a change. Okay. Yeah, well, let's go to more recent compromised placentas. I think you said that especially recently you've been seeing more and more problems with placentas. I want to hear what you're seeing, and I do want to bring up the question of vaccination status, because I don't know if you're aware, but our group of doctors and scientists have found very direct, causation between the vaccination, which bioaccumulates everywhere. And specifically, my theory is that the lipid nanoparticles they're designed to traverse every membrane in the human body. This has been known by the people who make lipid nanoparticles for 10 years. And of course, the placenta is a membrane. So, you know, the lipid nanoparticles, and our COO found that the lipid nanoparticles actually get into the fetal environment, get into the fetus, and actually degrade the testes of fetal baby boys. We don't know what's going to happen to them, you know, the next generation of children of vaccinated moms. Right. But let's go specifically to what you're seeing with compromised placentas more recently and any relationship to vaccine status.
Yeah. So so what I see, and I think it's with the spike proteins, bodies are exposed to these spike proteins, and it seems to me it doesn't matter if you've had COVID or if you've got a vaccination. We're seeing it in all of it. Wow. So I mean, I want to do a spreadsheet to really map out, because sometimes there's been a few of our women that have gotten vaccines during pregnancy, and just to really look at the difference. But I'm seeing the COVID bumps in placentas that are if they've had COVID during pregnancy, it seems to be worse. If they've had vaccination, if they've had COVID before, because the spike proteins are in their bodies.
Oh my God.
So, another thing that we see that we're seeing more of is that the insertion of the cord, usually it just goes right into the placenta. And then the cord has 2 arteries and 1 vein. And but what we're seeing, and then also the vascular configuration of when the tree of life is coming in, there's more than 2 arteries and 1 vein, but they come in and join. But so what we're seeing in a lot of the placenta, and it can be more dramatic or not so dramatic, is it's called a velamitous insertion of the cord, where the veins are more spread out like this. And so there's danger of, like, if the placenta is, not gently coming out, that those can break, the vessels can break off. We've had a few, like, the cords will just spring a leak. And, after the baby's born, and it hasn't happened for us when the babies are inside, but it's after the born. It's just like, where's this blood coming from? And then there's just this little leak in the vessel.
Is that unusual?
Pardon?
Is that unusual for the cord?
It is unusual. Yeah, it is unusual.
It sounds like all the tissues have been weakened.
Yep.
In some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things that we are recommending women, and we even did this for varicose veins, because varicose veins are, they're stretched out veins, and they get worse with each pregnancy. And one of the things to help make stronger cell walls of the cord, the vessels or whatever, and it can be the placenta, their legs or whatever, is there's this supplement. Well, there's whole food vitamin C, which makes stronger cell walls. We're really recommending women to either take a whole food vitamin C or eating more whole food vitamin C foods, as well as there's this other product called Cyruta Plus that is made from buckwheat juice, and it has the vitamin C complex, has bioflavonoids in it and rutin, and it makes the cell walls stronger. And so it has a stronger amount of that. They call it vitamin P in the Cyruta.
Say the name of that product again.
Cyruta Plus. It's from Standard Process.
Okay, thank you. Cyruta, CY.
Yeah,
okay.
CY. Ruta Plus. Yeah.
All right. So you said that you're seeing these abnormalities, or what could be, God forbid, the new normal, in women who have had COVID and women who have been vaccinated. Are women who have never had COVID and are not vaccinated normal? Like, what is your control group at this point?
Well, unfortunately, most of our people have had COVID at this point. It's at some point in the last, 3 years. And so, but there are placentas that look better when they have, we do take Medi-Cal clients. So we do have low income clients. And so there's a variety of diets that people have. And so the women that are more into whole foods and really and have their own gardens and eating more whole foods, and sometimes with that, some of those supplements that are whole food based, that their placentas are thicker and more lush and less COVID bumps. But and when we got to the point where it's just like, did we just not see these before? But then once in a while we'll get one that is, has minimal bumps.
Right. But you never see no bumps anymore?
I haven't seen no bumps in a while. Yeah.
And this all began after 2020?
Yep.
And you've been delivering babies since 1976. So you definitely would know the before and after.
Right.
God. And so let me just tease this out a little bit, because this is the first time I'm hearing that COVID could be causing these placental problems instead of the mRNA vaccination. Are you sure that that you've seen women who are not vaccinated, but who have had COVID and they're having these problems? Like, have you ruled out the possibility that all of these problems are caused by the mRNA injection?
Let me get this out of here. So what I'm seeing is that I'm seeing the COVID bumps and these problems in women that have had COVID, especially during their pregnancy, as well as if they've had the vaccination or if they've
Right.
COVID.
I'm sorry, jumping in. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to make sure you've seen these problems in unvaccinated women who have had COVID.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's terrible news.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's all terrible news. My goodness.
And the COVID disease, I mean, I think it's my opinion that it was a man-made situation.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So, and both of them, you know, having COVID or the vaccine, you know, it creates the spike proteins in their bodies and does, you know, similar things. And people that had vaccines are getting COVID.
Yeah. So are women in your practice having worse outcomes if they have both had COVID and been vaccinated with the mRNA vaccine?
I'd have to look at that more. And I'm trying to think, especially with the ones that have had more bleeding or more of the COVID bumps, or like that 3-pound baby mama. I can't remember. I'd have to look to see if she had COVID and the vaccination.
Well, thank you. It would be so helpful for our purposes if you could do a spreadsheet and look at who had COVID and vaccination, who had just a vaccination. Because everything you're saying is so important, but I can't tell from what you're saying whether this is caused by COVID and not affected by the vaccine, or whether the vaccine adds a layer of danger or complexity to the childbirth process from your perspective. So breaking those categories down would be amazing. If you have time to do that, it would be a great public service.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the babies. How are the babies doing from these compromised placentas? We heard that the one tiny miracle baby is doing fine, but another fetal maternal medicine specialist to whom we've spoken, who's also reported these calcifications, Dr. James Thorpe, is seeing genetic malformations, chromosomal abnormalities. Are you seeing anything unusual in the babies of compromised placentas?
So what we're seeing, because we have, you know, low risk, and you have to be low risk to have your babies in our birth center.
Right.
But what we are seeing, especially in the last few months, that, you know, that the babies, we've had more babies that had to transfer to the hospital for respiratory issues. Even when they're born, they're fine, they have good APGARs, but then they'll develop some respiratory issues, that retractions or grunting. And I think, again, in my mind, is how, you know, the little lungs, it has microcirculation. They have fluid in their lungs from being in the womb. And so when they're taking their first breath, that fluid gets pushed out of their lungs, you know, through their little lung microcirculation. And so these babies are not transitioning as well as normal as they used to. And so we've had, and with out of hospital birth, at least 6 babies in the last couple months that have ended up in the hospital and in the NICU for a few days, you know. And so what they do is they, especially, they, you know, have an X-ray on the baby, and they often get, you know, IV antibiotics and different things, and they're in the hospital for, you know, depending on the situation, for a couple of days or a couple of weeks.
That's very scary. And lastly, I want to ask you about breastfeeding. Our group of experts did find that polyethylene glycol entered the breast milk. It's a petroleum byproduct of vaccinated moms, and caused babies to go into convulsions. One baby died, sadly. And it also caused failure to thrive, and kind of they're inconsolable. And the percentage of women breastfeeding, new moms breastfeeding, has dropped, understandably, in the last couple of years. How are your moms doing in terms of breastfeeding, and are the babies thriving on breast milk of vaccinated moms?
We haven't seen any direct problems with breastfeeding. We've seen more, and I have no idea if it's related to the vaccine or COVID, is that we see more tongue ties. That's where the little skin piece underneath the tongue is tight.
It has to be surgically cut.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
But we haven't seen any. There's been a few babies that were slower to gain weight, but we didn't really associate that to anything. We'll have to look at that. And, but we haven't noticed any, failure to thrive specifically. Usually we get on it and they get their tongue clipped, and then they usually, gain weight. Well, we haven't had any failure to thrive.
But you've just said something very important, because if a lot of moms or more moms are having babies with the tongue that needs to be clipped, that interferes with nursing, right? And so the moms might not know why their babies are having trouble nursing or having trouble latching on, unless they're very lucky to have a midwife who can identify that could account for the 20% drop in breastfeeding moms in the last couple of, or help to account for it.
Yeah, because it's more painful for the mom with the tongue tie, and there's not a good transfer of the milk to the baby.
Right.
So
This is so tragic. And what could be causing more tongue ties? Like, that sounds like a developmental thing.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say if it has anything to do. It's just something that we see more, but we haven't been able to really connect it to the vaccine or COVID or anything specific. Yeah, it's interesting.
Are the APGARs about the same, or have you seen any changes?
Yeah, the APGARs are good. APGARs are good. Initially that's what's been kind of strange, is that that the APGARs are good, and then like 10 hours after the baby's born, the baby stops breathing or starts having, or even a couple hours, 6 hours after the baby's born, they start having retractions or grunting.
What's a retraction?
Retractions is when it kind of sucks in underneath the ribs or the xiphoid. So when they're breathing, it just kind of sucks in, and with every breath, that's the thing that makes it, concerning. And then grunting, it's like with every exhale, they make this little noise. At first, it sounds like that's a cute little sound, but it's just like,
oh dear, oh dear.
With every exhale.
Oh gosh.
So when that happens, we need to get the babies checked out to make sure that everything's okay.
Well, with everything that you've described, it sounds like childbirth, which is nerve-wracking and can be scary and intimidating enough, especially for first-time moms, has many more possibly scary or concerning moments, whether it's hematomas, whether it's calcifications, whether it's babies going into respiratory distress upon being taken home. Whatever has happened in the last 2 to 3 years that you're observing is turning childbirth into a scarier and more difficult time for women and babies, as opposed to simply a healthy time of joy and confidence. Is that a fair thing to say?
It can be, and I hate to say that too, because I hate to
don't want to scare moms. I know.
Yeah, I don't want to scare moms, but we are letting them know that we're seeing more hemorrhages, and that our goal is not to stay out of the hospital, but to have the safest birth as possible.
Right.
And the other thing was that those deep vaginal tears that really bleed, because where it's easier for the physicians to stitch something up like that than it is for us.
Yeah.
When they're bleeding so much.
Right. I mean, none of these things are things you want. And I'm just so grateful to you. I'm very angry as I'm listening to you that you are literally the first female healthcare practitioner. It's amazing who has come forward. But I'm grateful to you. And all of these things are lasting. They don't just impact children, they impact, well, as you're saying, mom's desire to have another child, their sense of confidence and security in having another child. Certainly they're going to be impacting women's sexual lives, is my understanding from having written a book about the vagina. And, it's a delicate tracery of nerves down there. And, all of this hematoma and tearing and trauma is just not good for women moving forward, quite apart from their healthy and safe deliveries. So you've described something incredibly important. The future of our species depends on understanding what you're seeing. It's Ellen Jasmer, everybody. It's the SierraNaturalBirthCenter.com. And how can people find out more? You'll send us, I hope, your spreadsheets, and failing that, I know you're very busy, you'll send us your videos and your pictures. How else can people find out about what you're saying and support you?
That's a good question. Well, they can contact us through the website, and also, the supplements in pregnancy that I think the ones that have taken that for varicose veins, their placentas look better. And so that I will
put those in the link for sure. I will put a link to that product on our site. I want to end by suggesting something to you. We're going to get a lot of email, and you might also, from moms who are about to go through childbirth or have gone through childbirth. I'm going to just invite you to be a guest presenter on DailyClout, maybe every week, every 2 weeks, every month, as your schedule permits, so that we can bring these questions to you and you can educate women as they're going forward. But we can cut that part if you like. And you can think
that would be sweet. Yeah, that would be good.
Well, Miss Jasmer, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm so grateful to you. And I know many moms and babies and dads as well will be super grateful to you for describing what you have. And God willing, real doctors and real scientists will get to work and figure out how to protect our moms and babies.
Yeah.
As well as you and the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Take care. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of DailyClout, and I just want to give a thank you to our sponsor, The Wellness Company, whose chief medical team includes some of our most respected colleagues, including Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Harvey Risch. So The Wellness Company offers COVID and vaccine injury treatments, including ivermectin, as well as dietary supplements based on the guidance of these noted physicians and epidemiologists, such as Spike Support, which is designed to help combat spike protein. So click on the link below or head to dailyclouthealth.com to purchase their products. You can also gift healthcare to your loved ones, which is something I've been doing. I'm excited about the Wellness Company being able to offer medical advice without the pressure of big pharma. Please use the code DailyClout for 10% off. Thank you again to the Wellness Company, our sponsor.